Good afternoon. I'm Thom Scott, and I'm Rick's slightly older brother. I'm sorry I couldn't be here this afternoon, but I'm so glad that you are. I'd like to say a few words to Rick. You know, I don't mean to steal a riff from an old Smothers Brothers routine, Rick, but Mom always liked you best. That's right. So did Dad, the neighbors, Toby the dog, Mr. Whiskers, and on and on and on. As firstborn, I was friendly and gregarious, but still kind of cheeky, opinionated, abrasive. You were friendly too, and yes, opinionated as well, but in a shy and polite sort of way. Hard to get to know, but worth the effort. You never grated on family or classmates. You got along with one and all. Over these past few weeks, memories have come flooding back to me. Scott and Hooper family gatherings in Syracuse, a small trailer in the woods, and a mile walk with each other along a dirt road to the school bus. The Cardiff Giant. Later, when we lived on the farm, we'd play in the barn, chase the cows in for milking, attend the Presbyterian church in Lafayette. Elba, where you met your good friend Joey Combo. Oakfield, with a nice white house on the corner. Helping Dad and Mom literally build a new house on a country road north of Churchville. Upstate New York, small-town America in the 50s and the early 60s. We didn't know it then, but it was right out of Norman Rockwell. You were a smart kid, and you knew it, but you didn't push it on anybody. When you wanted to learn something, you really learned it. I remember a 4x8 sheet of plywood set up on sawhorses in the basement on Stony Point Road. You had covered it all with modeling clay, forming hills and valleys, complete with miniature trees, houses, and barns. This wasn't any old countryside either. It was Gettysburg, accurate in great detail, derived from a pile of Civil War books and maps scattered around the room. Out of clay again you formed hundreds of little soldiers, blue and gray, along with horses, cannons, tents, all the accoutrements of war in the 1860s. You'd be in the basement every night after dinner for months, building it, figuring out tactics of the North and the South, what went right, what went wrong. This wasn't even a class assignment or a history project. It was just an itch you had to scratch. Like most siblings, we didn't always get along, but we had our times. In Elba, New York, at the Onion Harvest Festival, we couldn't stop laughing at the idea of an onion queen. Did she wear a crown on her head and a clothespin on her nose? Who would date her? When the folks told us to quit squabbling in Oakfield, we set up United Rooms, modeled after the United Nations, complete with meetings, a gavel, and resolutions. It worked for a while, too. When the president was shot in Dallas, we tried to wrap our young minds around the terrible sadness and stuck close to family. Not long after, we would debate into the night the relative merits of the Beatles versus Herman's Hermits. Who had the better songs, Peter Noone or John Lennon? I think I ultimately won that argument, Rick, but we'll discuss it again someday. When the family, minus me, moved to Arizona, Mom and Mike flew out to Phoenix, while you and Dad drove the truck and took the scenic route. Mom later told me she wondered if she'd ever see her furniture again since you two were getting off the interstate and exploring the countryside all the way. As adults, you and I would sometimes carry on our sibling rivalry in the form of political discussions. Wow, what a bad idea. I was a Democrat, a bit to the left of center. You, a Republican, could make Rick Perry look like Ted Kennedy. We were both passionate and got to yelling now and then, so we finally agreed to disagree and speak of things that were more pleasant. Among those things were our love of animals. We had so many when we were kids, cats, dogs, and even some of the livestock on the farm became pets. Good thing it was a dairy farm, huh? You and Terry would come over to our place in Phoenix and look after our cats when Jay and I would go on vacation. Upon our return, we'd notice that Brooke and Mars were just a little heavier and very, very happy. Merlin and Chantilly are going to miss you, Rick. Anybody who knows you had a very dry, very wry sense of humor. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and laugh, saying to myself, "Aha! That's what he meant." Your humor could be a ticking time bomb, going off hours later, just as you'd planned. The memory of your smile, Rick, still makes me smile, and it always will. I'm so glad that you and Terry finally moved out of this desert to a small and lovely place, ultimately an acre near Port Angeles, where upon a few minutes' walk from your front door you could watch whales breaching in the strait, then turn directly around and gaze at glacier-covered mountains. I'm glad that you two could look out your living room window and watch the clouds paint an ever-changing scene on those mountains. I'm glad you could hear the wings of geese flapping past your bedroom window. And I'm very glad I came to see you in late September and finally drink in the beauty of this land you loved. You've always been contemplative and caring, a good husband, a strong friend when you needed one, a wonderful brother, and a fine photographer. You liked being all of these and more. And you know what, Rick? I've always liked you best, too. I love you, Rick, and I'll miss you forever. Godspeed, my brother. Godspeed.